What up, artists? My name is Dwayne Jones. I'm the creative director and founder of a lifestyle brand called Art Pays Me. This is the Art Pays Me podcast, and I'm passionate about finding ways that people like you and me can make a living for ourselves off of our creativity. And, maybe we can make the world a better place at the same time. Let's get into it. Welcome to Art Pays Me. Today we have Chantel Gushue. So I met Chantel at NSCAD. We can't seem to remember because our brains are old if we had class together. But yeah, and then we ran into each other like 15 years later, and it was like, oh snap, you exist. So Chantel, what is it that you do today?
So that is a big question because I do a lot of things. But the four big ones, I guess, I am a jewelry technician at NSCAD University. I'm a regular part-time faculty at NSCAD University. I'm a jewelry appraiser, and I also am on the board of Co-Adorn Art Jewelry Society.
Nice. What exactly is Co-Adorn?
So Co-Adorn is an organization that I co-founded in 2017 with Emily Wareham, who is another local jeweler, to kind of build community for art jewelers and all kinds of jewelers in Nova Scotia, because we felt there was a lack of a cohesive community for sharing ideas and developing opportunities and sharing. Yeah.
So what's the difference between an art jeweler and, say, another kind of jeweler?
So again, that's like a really big question that I don't even think we could answer in an hour. So typically, like, this is a very broad stroke of what an art jeweler is, but art jewelry is jewelry made by artists. So there's usually a lot of material research, concept, not necessarily jewelry made solely for adornment. Usually there's a statement of some kind. It's trying to create a conversation. Yeah, usually, not always, but oftentimes using alternative materials. So metals are involved, but there might be all kinds of other things involved too. So it's beyond metal and gemstones.
Okay, cool. So you're currently in Halifax.
Yes.
Where'd you grow up?
I'm from Moncton, New Brunswick, and I moved to Dartmouth in middle school and moved back to Moncton in high school, and then immediately left to go to NSCAD.
So what kind of child were you?
I was a pain. Too much attitude, too much sass, because I thought it made me seem intelligent. And I was always told that I was mature, and didn't understand until later that that didn't actually mean that I was mature in any way, shape, or form. It just meant that I was good at keeping a schedule and making it through to-do lists. I was a pain, I think. Yeah. Yeah.
That's funny. So, like, were you like just giving your parents a hard time?
All of the time, and I don't know that there was any reason for it other than because I could. They let me, so I did it.
That doesn't surprise me.
Yeah.
So, like, tell me about your work. What are you in the art side of jewelers, or are you the other kind of jeweler?
So I've tried to do all of it, and I think that I am currently both. So it's finally come full circle for me, because when I was a student at NSCAD, I struggled a lot with the concept development and being conceptual with my work, because I really wanted to just get a job with Cartier and call it a day. And I didn't feel that I was necessarily learning the skills that would get me that job. that I never got. And so I had lovely mentors there who recognized that I needed something different than the studio environment that was being provided to me. And so someone there had a connection with the head designer at Berks in Montreal. And so for my final studio, I didn't make any art. I packed up everything I owned and I moved to Montreal, and I went and worked for Berks, and then was marked as present in my studio class, but was never there. Instead, I was being an intern.
Wow.
Yeah. And so that was really great. But then through a bunch of crazy circumstances, Berks was bought by an American company, and they don't design their own jewelry anymore. And it's all outsourced to other countries. And there was no potential to be hired there. But with a little bit of serendipity, the designer at Berks suggested that maybe I should learn a little bit about gemstones. And so through many, many years and several degrees later, I became a gemologist, which usually plays into more of the commercial side of jewelry, like identifying gemstones and evaluating gemstones. And then something happened in the past few years that I realized, okay, well, maybe now that I really understand what art jewelry is, maybe I do fit in there too. And I went back to grad school and am making that kind of work now.
Okay, cool. So like when I listen to like a rap song and I hear them say like VVS and all that kind of, you know what that means?
I do know what that means, and I can identify that and certify stones as being that. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's cool.
That's a very nice diamond.
No, like, and I kind of learned a bit about that stuff, like during the looking for the engagement ring for my wife. And I was like,
Sure.
this is a whole other world.
Yeah, it's a very complex system for pricing, really, is what it is.
Yes, crazy. How are you coping with the pandemic?
The pandemic has been interesting. I have two little children, one that is in school and one that is not in school. So when the daycares closed, I became a stay-at-home mom, which was never in my life plans and hasn't been easy. But on the flip side, I really like being at home. So it's nice to not have to leave home.
Yeah.
But hard to be a full-time parent because that was never my plan. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it's hard. I never learned the skills to entertain young people for extended periods of time. And I'm really not good at playing. I'm not, for somebody, who is allegedly creative, I'm not good at coming up with ideas for keeping them active during the day. They're two very different age groups. One is an old 8-year-old and one is a young 4-year-old, and they don't want to hang out together. And I'm not really great at kind of bridging the gap between their ages and keeping them happy all day. It's very difficult.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm not great at coming up with activities, and sometimes people are like, oh, you're an artist, though. You could come up with like a cool craft that they could do or like some kind of art activity. And I'm just like,
that assumes they want to do that.
Exactly. Yeah, they might not want to do any of that.
Exactly.
What I've come to learn is they just want to do what they want to do when they want to do it. And sometimes it's play outside, sometimes it's not play outside, sometimes it could be reading, and then times when you want them to read, they want to do something else. It's like,
yeah, it's totally, I'm sure, a very different dynamic between how they behave with us and what they're like when they're at school or at daycare with other people.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, for sure. My youngest in particular, teachers are always surprised at how she's not quiet. I'm like, at home, she can't move through the house without singing or stomping or doing spinning and jumping and screaming. And it's like, they're like, she does what at home? At school, she's so quiet and doesn't say much. And it's like, yeah. And so it's like, we see you playing games with us. Yeah. So I saw you doing some like stone experiments. Is that like related to the gemology?
So no, the stone experiments that you may see on social media are my thesis work, because even through the pandemic, I defend my master's thesis in mid-August. And so I'm still trying to create that body of work with limited access to resources and time. Yeah, so I've been growing crystals.
That's cool.
Yeah, to set at home into jewelry. But yeah, it's a lot like elementary school science.
Hmm.
But yeah, it's been interesting. I'm learning a lot.
Are you able to like say if you hypothetically wanted to do one like the size of a room, could you do like something like that?
You can do that with certain chemicals. It reacts better than others, but there are artists that have done that. Um,
Cool.
yeah, yeah, I can send you some links of some people that have done similar things like that to make statements about like public housing in the UK. I wish I could remember his name right now, but yeah, there's a somewhat recent, within the past few years, a contemporary artist that filled a room with these electric blue crystals.
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm getting like cool installation ideas now. Actually, when
Yeah,
people
for sure.
actually get together and do.
Yeah, totally. What the work that I'm working on, the pieces that I'm working on, I've been making molds and then growing crystals into those molds that I've made. So I'm being very deliberate in the profile, the outcome, and the shape of what these crystals look like. Yeah.
Okay.
Exerting my control on these crystals.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So, and I see you've got like bones in some of your work.
Yeah, so my work is about kind of the properties of how crystals develop, and bone is a crystal, but I'm using cow bone.
Oh, okay.
So so it's not, human bone would have been better, but turns out that's actually really hard to get.
Uh,
Yeah, so I've been using cow bone, yeah, to kind of show, to compare and contrast, I guess, visually between the beautiful sparkly crystal that we know and love to the bone crystal that we kind of neglect and is less attractive.
so
Yeah.
bone is like a type of crystal?
It is a crystallized material. Yeah.
Interesting.
Hmm.
That's a deeper statement than I thought. Huh.
Yeah. So this work is all about perfectionism and failure, because atomically, when a crystal grows, it's made up of very specifically shaped blocks that stack in 3 dimension on itself.
Mm,
But its failure is that it can grow forever, but will never grow forever because something else stops it from being able to do so.
mm,
So in that like attempt at perfection, it can't ever achieve it and is bound to fail. And
right.
so that is kind of a little bit deeper into what my thesis is about.
Okay. And your MFA is in gemology or is it?
No, my MFA is in interdisciplinary arts,
Oh, okay.
or will be, hopefully.
Come on.
It's
You know
the
you're gonna
idea.
get it.
I mean, I don't know. I've never heard of anyone failing an MFA, but
Well, people who tend to do that kind of thing are driven enough that
yeah.
it's just not likely. So
Well, and we both know that you can argue all kinds of things for art. So,
this is
yeah.
true. This is true. How
Yeah.
much arguing did you spend how much time did you spend arguing at NSCAD when you were?
NSCAD was okay, though, I think. NSCAD was okay. I didn't love crit. Like, I have a lot of strong opinions about how like a 20-person group crit operates,
Mhm.
because I think that's a really old school and outdated way of like helping a person develop their body of work, or to give advice on ways forward. I really like strongly dislike the crit process. It's
Mm.
actually been a lot harder in my MFA, because as a jeweler in an interdisciplinary arts program, I am speaking mostly to fine artists, like painters, primarily painters,
Mm.
and we don't speak the same language.
Ah.
our art language is very different. And that has been the hardest part, I think.
So like when you teach, how does that work? Is it, now you're on the other side.
Yeah. So when I teach, though, I'm not teaching. It's a liberal arts and science class. So when I teach, I only teach gemology. I don't teach studio arts because I don't have an MFA, so I'm not allowed to.
Ah, okay.
So in my liberal arts and science class, gemology, it is like a science class for jewelers and all, or not jewelers. I have a lot of students from DAL actually who take my class. Yeah, so it's kind of more like a special interest class. And we do like more science experiments and testing and learning about how minerals form and about the VVS and things like that. So, yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, it's more of like a vocabulary class.
Okay.
Back to basics, high school physics and chemistry, and lots of words, new words.
So like, I've been somewhat interested in teaching. I'm not sure if I ever would want to do it, but sometimes I think I would. Do you find, and I think if I did, I would teach at the university level. Do you find that people are like independent and want to do the work, or you still kind of have to chase some people?
It totally depends on the student. I would say, like, if you divided the class up, because our class size is very small, and like a class of 12 students, I would say I would have 4 students that are exceptional. I would have, 10 students that are doing just fine. They're putting in as much as they want to put in and they're happy with that. And that's totally their prerogative. And then I have 1 or 2 students that struggle or don't want to be there. And they're a little bit more work in trying to help them, get through what they want to accomplish. I really think it's all based in like how you approach teaching. I think it's really a lot in the professor to mitigate those things.
Got you.
Yeah.
So in terms of your work as a jeweler, and not as a jeweler, would you say you're a jeweler too, or is that not really?
I think that's really hard. I think everyone is interdisciplinary. I am currently focusing on jewelry, but I've done other things. I know how to draw and paint, but I prefer jewelry right now, but maybe not forever.
So like you're multidisciplinary
I think everybody is, though, don't you?
Yes, that's true. Yeah,
I think that like even throughout history, just someone might be known for a specific discipline, but they've done lots of different things. Like we went to school and had to take all of those classes, like 16 courses over a 4-year period. Like every class wasn't jewelry. I have 2 minors.
Yeah. I could have gone, I was very close to, I think I minored in digital media, but I could have minored in, I think, drawing or illustration or something like that, because I took so many drawing courses.
Yeah, exactly. I minored in art history and graphic design.
Right.
Which sounds really impressive. I want to put the caveat out there that it sounds like, oh man, she must have worked really hard. It really just means I only took courses in art history and graphic design and jewelry and nothing else.
Yeah, that's more or less me too. It was like, I just happened to take a lot of classes in that same stream. So it's like, it worked out that I had a minor, basically.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't go to school for 10 years. I just only took 3 types of classes. That's all.
Yeah. So what would you say is the hardest part? Is there a hard part, or do you kind of does work just kind of flow for you?
In like the creative work?
In the creative work, yeah.
I think I blame graphic design for this.
Okay.
Especially when you and I were in school, we did everything by hand.
Yeah.
And so there's like a level of meticulousness that we were taught to have. And I think it transfers really nicely into jewelry. And we have a lot of success in the jewelry department with students who we steal from graphic design because we know how to take elements and rearrange them over and over and over and over again until you get a successful outcome. So to me, that exercise is just part of the making process. So for me, the struggle is more in like the material exploration, because art jewelry, you can make it out of anything. That kind of like settling on, is this going to be made out of plastic? Is it going to be made out of cow bone? Is it going to be made out of paper? It's kind of like developing the concept and exploring the materials. For me, that's the harder part, but the actual making is fun. It's the fun part.
So, I had a similar trajectory in terms of, I just wanted to work for a big fancy agency.
Yeah.
When I came out of school, did you find when you got to work at Burke's, did that change your perception of what the commercial side of things looks like?
I think that's a hard question to answer because the commercial side is a whole industry. And it was nice to be locked away up in the offices and to be looking at the historical pieces, because it's an old company. They had, over 100 years worth of jewelry that you could reference for work. But the part that I really didn't enjoy was the practical side. Like the drawing and the coming up with ideas was fine. But what they would do is that they would come in and they would say, we just bought 500 of this stone in this shape. You need to come up with a design that costs less than X amount of money using this stone in this way. And even though I really like limitations, the limitations really like sucked all the creativity out of it. Because it would, it'd be like, you have this stone, it has to be surrounded by diamonds, it has to be in yellow gold, it can't be taller than this on your finger if it's a ring, for example, and it has to cost less than $1,500. Like it really kind of sucks all of the fun out of it. Yeah.
So like if you're outside of that situation, you just like, hey, this thing I made could cost $100 or it could cost $30,000. You're just kind of going.
Yeah, there's more freedom that way. But
yeah, that's one thing that is very, I find, challenging. So do you find in general too, people might pick a lane even if they're going down that path, in terms of, I always do use this type of metal, or I always use these types of gems?
I think, and this is again like a real broad generalization, that past students, myself included, often will go down the path where they're making production jewelry. So they're making the same piece over and over and over again at kind of like an under $500 price point.
Yeah.
Or they are making engagement and wedding jewelry, because it's incredibly difficult to make a living as an artist jeweler. It's a very misunderstood discipline. A lot of people see the work and think it's not wearable, or that it's like really weird. Oftentimes like way bigger than what people want to wear on a regular basis. So again, like a real broad generalization, because this is not 100% true, but a lot of times it's other art jewelers who are buying and wearing art jewelry.
Right.
So like we are our own market in a lot of ways. Whereas like the general population is wearing kind of more production silver jewelry, or their wedding jewelry. Yeah.
So your work's been exhibited all over the place. So Vancouver,
Yes.
Seoul, Philadelphia, Brooklyn.
Yeah.
How do you get that kind of attention?
So it isn't, a lot of it is calls. A lot of it is opportunities, like Seoul and Vancouver. Those are both opportunities that Co-Adorn created for Co-Adorn members. we are really fortunate that we have a very strong, like we're not a small group. We're over 75 people.
Okay.
And so we have members who have connections and they are willing to put the work in to benefit the rest of the membership. So a professor at NSCAD is a member of Co-Adorn, and she has connections in Korea because she is Korean. And last time she was home visiting family, walked into a gallery or a few galleries and said, "Hey, I want to bring work here. Will you have a show for us?" And they agreed because she has such an incredible reputation. And then the gallery in Vancouver is another member that we have who is a curator who has access to a gallery. And then our board here has a strong connection to the Mary E. Black Gallery for the Center of Craft Nova Scotia. And so we were able to have this traveling exhibition by using our resources that already existed within the membership. I think with like the opportunities in the US, I really feel like I go to grad school in America, and I think that helps a lot. I don't know that I would have gotten into any of those shows if I was a Canadian applying, but I can have the appearance of having strong connections to America, and I think that helps me out. But really, for a lot of those shows, they're call for entries, and I believe that like a really good quality photo and a strong artist statement is all you need. And the $35 to enter the contest to get in.
Cool. So basically, like, just don't sit around, actively go out and look for these opportunities.
Yeah, actively go out and look for these opportunities. I'm really fortunate because of having been a student in the States. I have lots of like really great friends who, when they see calls, maybe locally, like I have friends in New York who are constantly looking at calls for entry, who will see a call that they think applies to me and they'll send it along. I would never have found those calls myself. Yeah. So it's really all about working your connections, I think. And not being afraid. I have one of my classmates in my cohort is really smart. I thought that he sets aside a budget every year of how much money he is going to spend on calls for entry, knowing that every time you apply to a call, it's somewhere between $35 Canadian and like $50 American. And he just knows that he's setting aside however much money every year that he is actively putting towards calls for entry.
Smart, almost like a marketing budget.
Yeah, absolutely. I think for an artist, you have to do that. There's a lot of, we get a lot of pushback with Co-Adorn because we do charge an entry fee because we need, or like a call for entry fee. So regardless of whether you're accepted into the show, we charge a certain amount of money to process the work that is being submitted. But we need that money to put the show on. So we're not being paid because we're a volunteer organization and we're a volunteer board, but we need that money to build displays and print posters and print postcards and to do advertising and things like that. But there is a culture I find right now, especially within the past few years, where younger people really don't want to pay entry fees. Which I totally get because it's a gamble that you're putting money forward when you might not have it. To potentially be rejected. But that the organization needs that money to put the show on. So it's kind of
it's tough because
it's hard to navigate. Because I get that. I totally know what it's like to be a student with no money. But as someone now who's on the other side who needs that money to put on the show.
But you know what? Like I'm finding that too. It's like the more you sort of become a part of establishments and things, you realize, these things are all trying to figure out how to generate revenue in order to survive and grow just like everyone else. And sometimes it's not as easy as people think. Like sometimes people think of an institution as just like independently wealthy, and it's just not always the case.
And that is so not how it is. I definitely didn't realize how different it would be on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
But I've been on the other side for a long time now. But even to be a student now, but to also work in an academic environment as an instructor and as a studio manager, it's when I hear the concerns of other students, I'm like, yes, I can see your point of view now in a way that I hadn't or had forgotten. But I also know exactly what's going to happen on the other side. So it's really interesting to kind of have feet in both water.
Yeah, like full disclosure, I'm a board member at
Yes.
NSCAD. So I kind of like, but I'm also an alumni, and I'm also someone who
Mm-hmm.
cares a lot about students and was a student. So the concerns of students are important to me. The concerns of faculty are important to me.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also see the behind the scenes of some of the questions the board is trying to tackle and challenges the board has, and all of those kind of things. So sometimes it's not a cut and dry answer or a simple solution for a lot of the problems that come up.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. We do have that often, frequently, that students will have a specific demand, but just not understanding that, well, we get what the problem is and we really want to help you, but there are all of these barriers in the way from making that possible. And how do we, move forward? It's difficult, but yeah.
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 So you just gave some great advice. Is there any other advice you would give to someone who was pursuing a career in jewelry of some kind?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's we have such a specific set of skills um, that I think that it's difficult for people or graduating students or people who are new in the field to understand how those skills transfer to other things.
Mm-hmm.
My take on it was always, as long as I was in the field, I was okay.
Okay.
So when I worked at Berks, that was great. I was in the field. I was okay. I left when Berks dissolved their design department. I was working as a gemologist. I was still in the field. Everything was okay. I moved to Vancouver and worked for a diamond broker. Perfect. I'm still in the field. Everything is okay. And I just always kept feeling that as long as I was still doing it, I would stay doing it.
Right.
I think that it's so hard in the arts to say no to money. And that's how you end up leaving your artwork behind to take a more commercial job. So my whole thought the entire time was, okay, setting up my own studio maybe isn't for me. I'll go get a job for someone else, but as long as it's related to jewelry, then I'm fine.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah.
No, but yeah, it basically just as long as you kind of keep working, keep building, as long as you're in the industry.
Yeah, and I think a really important thing for everyone, whether you're an artist or not, is to like know yourself or try things until you figure out who you are.
Mm.
Because I tried all of the other things. Like I tried to have an Etsy shop. I don't like making that kind of work. I don't like that price point. I don't like filling orders. I don't like spending 45 minutes every day putting things into envelopes and walking to the post. Like these are things that I know about myself. I know that I am not good at self-promotion.
Mm-hmm.
So I try to pick things that don't involve that. Like I just know who I am. So it hasn't been super difficult for me
Got you.
to kind of figure out,
Hmm.
what to do.
Okay. Do you
I
have
also,
any?
I
Go
also
ahead.
say yes to everything.
You say yes to everything?
I say yes to everything. I think it's really important to try everything once,
Okay.
because that's how you figure out whether or not it's for you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So if I come up with a space idea for an exhibition, you're going to say yes?
Yeah. Yeah. I'm in. Let's do it.
Okay, cool. You have anything you want to promote that's coming up?
Yeah, what is coming up? So for Co-Adorn, the three big things that are coming up is our show in Vancouver and Seoul. And we also have another group show in Quebec City, kind of closer to the holiday time, at a place called Gallery Lewis. For myself personally, I have work in a show in Cambridge, Massachusetts right now. That's opening in 5 days, I guess, at Gallery 263. I have work in an online show that's based out of Philadelphia right now for the Society of North American Goldsmiths. And I have my thesis exhibition, which is coming up, that will be online for almost the whole month of September. And I'll promote it on social media. But if you're interested in listening to my thesis presentation, because of this strange COVID situation, it will be live on Zoom. So anyone can drop in and hear more about the work.
Cool. So how can people get in touch with you? You have any social media or websites, anything like that?
Yeah, for sure. So my website is my name, Chantel Gushue, Gushue.ca, and I'm Chantel Gushue on Instagram.
All right. Chantel, thank you for doing Art Pays Me.
Happy to.
Thank you so much for listening to the Art Pays Me podcast. Thank you to Langy Beats for the theme music. If you got anything out of this show, please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. The more you do this, the more reach the podcast gets, and the more artists I can help learn to make a living at what they love. If you want to know more about what I do, hit me up at artpaysme.com or at artpaysme on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, and Pinterest. See y'all next time.